Hi, I'm Nathan, 33, and a week ago I gave my parents the biggest gift of my life, a $780,000 mountain retreat, fully paid, keys handed over with a smile. I thought this would be it. The moment they'd finally say, "We're proud of you, son." Instead, I got locked out. The plan was simple: surprise them. I'd been saving for years, silently, methodically. No flashy lifestyle, no random splurges. Every extra dollar went into what I called the cabin project. My parents always loved the mountains. Growing up, we'd go upstate maybe once every few years, rent a crusty cabin that smelled like mothballs and damp flannel, and pretend we were campers for a weekend. My dad would always say, "Someday I'd love a place like this, where the air's cleaner than our thoughts." So I made it happen. Not a crusty rental, a real, sprawling retreat. For bedrooms, wraparound deck, stone fireplace that looked like it belonged in a Hallmark movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views that made your soul sit down and shut up. It even came with a hot tub and a wood-burning sauna, because if I was going to give them peace, I was going to give them all the peace. I didn't tell them I'd bought it. I just drove them up one Saturday afternoon, pretending it was an Airbnb. I made up some story about finding it through a friend of a friend's app. My mom gasped when she saw the place. My dad stood with his hand on the banister like it was made of gold. We walked inside. I handed them a manila envelope with the deed. My name was nowhere on it. It was all theirs. My mom cried. My dad blinked, cleared his throat, and gave me this pat on the shoulder like I was a stray dog who just fetched the paper. I stayed the weekend, helped them unpack, made dinner, lit the fireplace. It felt like the closest we'd ever been. On Sunday, I drove back home, heart light. Finally, I thought, I did something right. And then, 1 week later, I came back with a bottle of wine and fresh baked bread to surprise them. The lock didn't work. I stood there in front of the door like a kid who forgot the lunch bell rang. I double-checked the address. The key clicked but wouldn't turn. I knocked. The curtain shifted in the window beside the entry. I saw my dad's face. Just his eyes and the side of his nose. He didn't open the door. He just stood there. I knocked again. Finally, the door opened 2 inches, held by the chain. He said, "Nathan, we didn't expect you." "Yeah, I figured I'd surprise you. Got some stuff from that bakery Mom likes." He didn't look at the bag. Instead, he said, "We need some space right now." My ears were ringing. "What?" My dad shifted like the conversation was making his shoes tighter. "We're settling into a new rhythm. You showing up unannounced, it kind of disrupts that. I bought this house for you. We know. And we appreciate it. But this isn't your home, Nathan. It's ours." I just stood there. The cold air bit at my neck. I wanted to say something, anything. But the words knotted in my throat like they'd swallowed a seatbelt. When he closed the door, the chain clicked like a punchline. I didn't drive away right away. I sat in the car staring at the grain of the wood on the cabin's front porch, wondering if I'd imagined the whole week before. That night, I texted Mom. "Me, can we talk? Mom, we think it's best if we take a little time to adjust. You gave us such a big gift, and we don't want to feel obligated. We just need a little room. Please respect that." I read that message 5 times. Obligated. That's what I was now. An obligation. I stared at the keys in my lap, the ones I had copied for them. The ones I thought meant something. Now they felt like metal metaphors. A few days later, I got a follow-up text from Dad. "Please don't just drop by again. We're trying to build something here. Don't take it personally." But how else was I supposed to take it? They hadn't just taken the house. They'd taken the door off whatever was left between us and slammed it shut. And I was starting to realize I hadn't just bought them a home. I'd bought myself right out of theirs. After that weekend, everything felt backwards. Like I had walked into a mirror version of my life where kindness equaled distance and love translated into isolation. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not my coworkers, not my friends, not even my therapist at first. It felt too ridiculous to say out loud. I bought my parents a mountain retreat, and they told me to stop coming around. That Monday, I went to work like normal, smiled through meetings, ate a sandwich at my desk, answered emails like someone whose life made sense. But inside, I felt like a guy who had just tried to hug someone and got slapped with a restraining order. The worst part, I still didn't understand why. So I drove up again, Yeah, I know. I shouldn't have. But I wasn't there to stay or settle. I just wanted to drop off a letter. Something I had written in a rush at 2 a.m., half sobbing, half hoping they'd see me as more than an intrusion. The note said, "I didn't buy you this place to get something from you. I bought it because you spent your whole lives working jobs you hated, and I finally had the chance to give you something better. Something yours. I never imagined that giving would cost me what little closeness we had. But if you truly need space, I'll give it. I just wanted you to know I did this out of love, not expectation." I left the letter inside the storm door. A week passed. No response. Then one night around 11:45, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice sounded tired, like she'd been crying or hadn't slept. "Nathan, we got your letter. We do love you. We're just trying something new. This cabin feels like a fresh chapter for us, and we don't want to fall into old patterns. You've always been so generous." Too generous, maybe. But sometimes we wonder if that's your way of keeping us close instead of just letting go. We're not rejecting you. We're reclaiming space. Please try to understand that. I played the message 3 times. Letting go. What exactly was I supposed to let go of? The illusion that we were ever close. That someday, I'd stop being the son who disappointed them by not being more like whoever they'd imagined raising. I called back. No answer. 2 days later, I sent a short text. "I understand you want space. Just don't confuse space with silence." They never replied. And then came the kicker. My cousin Rachel texted me, asking if I was planning to join the rest of the family up at the cabin next weekend. The what? I typed back. Turns out, they'd invited the extended family up for a little mountain getaway. My aunts, uncles, Rachel and her husband. Even my cousin Greg, who once ruined Christmas by live streaming a poker game on his phone during dinner. All of them were going to my parents' new chapter while I was still reading the rejection letter. I called Rachel. She answered chipper. "Oh my God, Nathan, the place is gorgeous. I can't believe they found it." "They didn't," I said flatly. "I bought it." She paused. "Wait, what?" "So," I told her. Not everything but enough. That I bought the place. That it was a gift. That I hadn't been invited back. The line went quiet for a long beat. Then she whispered, "They didn't tell anyone that. They said it was their retirement buy. That they wanted to get away from city drama." City drama. Translation, me. It was the first time I realized they hadn't just closed the door on me, they'd rewritten the entire story. The retreat wasn't a gift from their son. It was a symbol of their own self-made freedom. A narrative where they rose up and seized the dream for themselves, without me. I didn't cry. Not right then. But when I hung up the phone, I walked into the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and muttered, "You are not insane. This is real. This happened." It was the only way to keep myself from losing it. The next few days, I stayed off social media. I couldn't bear to see them posing on the deck I furnished, sipping wine on the porch swing I paid a carpenter to install, smiling for selfies under the beams I personally had reinforced because the inspector said the original joists were questionable. They were happy, and I was erased, until I wasn't, because someone probably. Rachel let it slip. Next thing I knew, I got a message from my Aunt Claire. Just for words. "You bought the house." I stared at it. Then I responded, "Yes." Her reply, "I'm sorry." And just like that, the narrative cracked. I wasn't trying to make anyone take sides. I wasn't looking for vengeance. But something in me needed someone else to know the truth. That I had given everything I could, not just money, but effort, heart, hope, and got nothing but distance in return. A few relatives started messaging me, asking if I was okay, telling me they hadn't known, saying things like, "That's not how they described it." But the only response I really wanted never came. Not from my mother. Not from my father. Not even a thank you. Not even a goodbye. And so the silence between us became its own kind of language. A sentence I would carry like a backpack full of rocks. Gift given. Door closed. And all I could do was drive past the trailhead sign each time I visited the mountains alone, knowing that the house I gave away now stood as proof of just how little space there really was for me in their lives. I didn't plan the drive up. One minute, I was sitting in my apartment eating leftover pasta out of a mixing bowl. The next I was in my car with an overnight bag and a playlist titled Do Not Cry Again queued up. It had been a month since the voicemail, 3 weeks since Rachel told me about the family weekend, 2 weeks since Aunt Claire's text. In all that time, my parents never reached out. Not even a hope you're well, not even a passive-aggressive prayer hands emoji. The road to the retreat was still familiar, those winding two-lane curves hugging the mountain, the pine trees getting taller with every mile. That one weird billboard advertising alpaca yoga. And then, right around the last bend, there it was, the house I built for them. It looked even better in autumn. The leaves were fire orange and stubborn gold, the porch swept clean, the wreath on the door updated to one of those trendy eucalyptus numbers. I recognized it from a store I'd taken Mom to once. She called it too expensive. I bought it anyway. My old key still didn't work, of course. But this time I didn't knock. I didn't want to talk. I just sat in my car across the road, staring. Not in a stalker way, I'm not proud of it, but in that dazed, emotional car crash kind of way. Like I needed to see the wreckage again to believe it had happened. A car pulled into the driveway. Not my dad's. It was a white crossover I didn't recognize. Out stepped a woman in yoga pants and a Patagonia jacket holding a tray of muffins. Behind her, a golden retriever. Then a man in hiking boots. Laughing, more guests, more people enjoying the gift I gave while I sat across the street like a stranger waiting for his own family to notice him. That was the moment I broke. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink hard. I just shut off. I turned the engine and drove away. Not down the mountain, but to the county office. I walked in like a man who had nothing left to lose and asked for every document tied to that property ownership. IP, taxes, trust agreements. The clerk printed out a stack so thick it needed a paperclip that looked like it belonged in a hardware store. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my attorney. You see, I'd originally set up the cabin as a gift, but a structured one. My name wasn't on the deed, true, but the land sat in a living trust. The kind of trust that, if pushed, could be revoked under breach of purpose. I hadn't expected to ever invoke that clause, but sitting there in the attorney's office, holding photos of strangers enjoying my parents' dream, I said, I want the house back. He didn't blink, just nodded and said, tell me what happened. So I told him. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't spin it. I told him I gave my parents a retreat to honor their sacrifices. That they responded by locking me out literally and emotionally. That they had now turned it into a revolving door for guests, Airbnb-style bookings, and curated family weekends I wasn't invited to. He skimmed the documents, pointed to a clause. Trust is based on beneficiary use and intent of gift. He said, this wasn't a commercial property. You have a case. My mouth went dry. I wasn't doing this to punish them. I was doing it because I had to reclaim something. Not the money, not the land, but my worth. The notice went out 2 days later. Polite, legal, formal. Dear Sam and Helen, per the attached documentation and trust stipulations, beneficiary use of the retreat has deviated from the agreed-upon intent. As such, this letter serves as formal notice of revocation and reassignment. Effective immediately, the trust is being dissolved, and the property shall revert to the grantor. I didn't sign it with love. Just my name. No response for 3 days. Then came the call. It was Dad. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just said, you're really doing this. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize. I said, you close the door. I'm just locking it behind me. He went quiet. Then, we didn't mean to hurt you. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. You did anyway. Clicked out. I got the keys back the following week via courier. No note. No muffins. Just a key in a padded envelope with a return address but no signature. The day I walked back into that cabin, it was empty. They had taken everything. Furniture, decor, even the stupid decorative canoe paddle I hung above the fireplace. The wreath was gone. The kitchen smelled like someone had wiped the memory of home clean with lemon pledge. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a crime scene. But then, something happened. I found a small ceramic owl on the windowsill. One of the knickknacks I bought from a roadside shop when I first brought Mom up here. She'd laughed at it. This is hideous, but placed it on the windowsill anyway. They forgot it. Or maybe they left it. I picked it up, set it back where it had been. and stood there for a long time. That house wasn't a home anymore, but it was mine again. And I had plans, not for revenge, for peace. Because if they could cut me out of their lives so easily, then maybe it was time I started building one that didn't hinge on their approval. One mountain at a time. I didn't sell the house. People assumed I would. Friends, even my therapist. Just let it go, they said. List it. Get the money. Move on. But that house wasn't just real estate. It was a message carved into wood and stone and silence. And I wasn't done reading it. Instead, I did something that honestly I think freaked my parents out more than the legal notice. I moved in. Full time. Just me, the mountains, and a stubborn little ceramic owl guarding the window like it was trained by me. The first few nights were quiet in that kind of eerie, unfamiliar way where even the fridge hum feels like a question. I slept with the fireplace going and kept the porch light on out of some residual instinct, as if someone might show up in the middle of the night with an apology baked into a pie. No one did. What did show up was the truth. In the form of a journal I found tucked in the built-in cabinet under the reading nook. My mom's. I wasn't snooping. I was vacuuming. And there it was. Spiral-bound, floral cover, labeled Retreat Journal. Part of me didn't want to open it. The other part, the part that bought the cabin and got locked out of it, did. The entries weren't daily, just scattered moments over the 3 months they lived here. August 9th, Nathan left today. He looked proud. I felt heavier than I expected. I don't know why. August 12th, Sam keeps saying we should get used to this being ours, but every time I light a fire, I feel like I'm in someone else's chapter. August 18th, Nathan texted. I didn't answer. I don't know what to say. This place feels like love wrapped in guilt. The last one hit the hardest. August 24th. Sometimes I wonder if we rejected the house because we couldn't handle what it represented. A gift too big to feel comfortable in. Nathan always gives like he's trying to earn something we never knew he wanted. I closed the journal and sat down. They hadn't locked me out because they hated me. They'd locked me out because I'd given them something so big, so emotionally loaded. They didn't know how to receive it without feeling indebted. I gave them a dream, and they saw a receipt, and they didn't know how to say that without sounding ungrateful. So instead they rewrote the story, made it theirs, erased me, not to hurt me, but to cope. It didn't fix anything, but it changed the burn from a fire to an ache. And with that ache came a weird clarity. I started fixing the place up not because it needed it, but because I needed to. I repainted the deck, replaced the cracked window in the guest room, ordered no furniture, piece by piece. Nothing expensive, but all intentionally mine. Nothing that whispered Mom would love this. No photo frames waiting for family portraits that would never come. Just clean wood, soft lamps, and silence I could live with. One night, about 2 weeks in, I got a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was Dad's single quotes S. Inside, one line. I shouldn't have said this wasn't your home. I didn't respond, not because I was angry but because I didn't know what responding would even mean. There was no request, no attempt to reconcile, just one sentence in place of an entire apology that would never come. Still, it cracked something open. And then, in the strangest twist of fate, the town paper called. Apparently, someone from the county had nominated the retreat for a seasonal Homes of the Highlands feature. Probably a neighbor. They'd seen me working outside with headphones in, staining the deck barefoot like a guy one bad thought away from buying chickens. The reporter asked if I'd be willing to do a short interview. Talk about the house, the build, the story behind it. I paused. And then I said yes, not to throw my parents under the bus, but because it was time my version of the story got told. The article came out the next weekend. A simple spread. Gratitude in the Pines, one man's mountain gift. I kept it honest. I told them I bought the place as a retirement gift for my parents, that it was a symbol of appreciation, of closing the loop between childhood struggle and adult success. I told them that gift had been complicated. I didn't name names. I didn't badmouth. But I said something that stirred the pot without lighting the stove. Sometimes we give people what we think they always wanted, but what they wanted was connection, not a cabin. The article made the rounds, and sure enough, the calls started again. First from an unknown number I didn't answer, then from Rachel. Then from Mom. Voicemails. Texts. A letter with no postmark. Just dropped in the mailbox like a ghost with guilt and decent handwriting. Her note was longer. No apologies. But a new kind of honesty. This house scared me, Nathan. It felt like you were showing us how much we'd failed. I know you weren't trying to. But every beautiful room felt like a reminder that we weren't there for you the way we should have been. We didn't know how to say thank you without shame attached. That last line broke something in me, because I had been waiting for a thank you. I just didn't know the price they'd have to pay to give it. I sat on the porch that night with a cup of tea and the ceramic all at my feet, watching the trees sway like they were nodding along to thoughts I hadn't said aloud. I still didn't respond. Not out of anger, but because some things, once named, don't need to be discussed again. They just need to be understood. And I was finally beginning to understand not just them, but myself. I wasn't a man locked out of his gift. I was the man who walked away from the need to be accepted, and ended up coming home. 3 months after moving into the retreat, I planted a dogwood tree in the backyard. It wasn't symbolic at first. I just thought the space needed something. A splash of white in spring. A little life that didn't depend on my approval. I dug the hole with a borrowed shovel, got blisters because I forgot gloves, and stood there with dirt on my jeans, looking at the tree like it might whisper, "You're doing fine." I didn't know then that I'd watch that tree grow every season from now on. That it would become my marker not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd chosen to build. Because here's what happened next. Nothing. And that was the miracle. My parents didn't show up at the door. They didn't write long apology letters or stage an emotional intervention in the driveway. No cousins appeared asking to mediate. No group texts buzzed to life with tearful GIFs and performative healing. It just stayed quiet. And I finally understood. I had grieved a family that never really existed the way I thought it did. I'd been trying to buy back belonging, trying to translate my love into deeds and roofs and hardwood floors. But the language of home isn't written in dollar signs. It's written in presence, in memory, in who gets a key and who uses it. They hadn't used theirs. So I changed the locks, but not out of revenge, out of peace. I started doing small things for myself, inviting friends up for the weekend, cooking elaborate meals just because, taking photos not for social media, but for a corkboard in the hallway that now holds Polaroids of people who show up without needing to be asked twice. I got better at saying no. I also got better at saying yes to myself. I said yes to waking up without dread, to reading on the porch, to rebuilding relationships that had nothing to do with blood, and everything to do with presence. And then one morning in December, I got an email. Subject line for the record. It was from my dad. No greeting. Just one sentence. "You were never trying to buy us, you were trying to belong." We see that now. I stared at that line for a long time. It didn't come with an invitation. It didn't ask for anything. It was, in the most ironic twist of all, the cleanest gift they'd ever given me. Recognition. I didn't reply, but I printed it out, taped it inside the kitchen pantry door next to my grocery list, and a note from my best friend that says more gar lick. Always. It's not forgiveness, but it's a bookmark, a page I don't have to keep rereading. Last week, I hosted Thanksgiving at the retreat. Not for my parents, not for people who forgot me when the keys stopped jingling, but for friends who brought their own folding chairs, their own jokes, their own pie, people who said, "Thanks for having us," and meant it, people who cleared their own plates, people who asked me, mid-meal, "Hey, is this where you grew up?" And I got to say with zero sadness in my voice, "No, but it's the first place that ever felt like I did." And that was the real gift. Not the cabin, not the keys, but the fact that I stopped waiting for someone else to make me feel like I belonged, and built a life where I did. From the ground up. One dogwood tree at a time.